Hello and welcome everyone. We'll just be waiting a few more minutes to let some other folks enter, and then we'll probably be getting started around 5 minutes after the hour.
Joining us today. It looks like a couple of people are still trickling in, but I think we can go ahead and get going with the presentation and people can continue to join us as they show up. So welcome to today's meeting on careers and sustainability, navigating career moves amid uncertainty. I know a lot of us are going to find this as a very valuable and interesting conversation, especially given everything that's going on in the world today. So I would say a little bit about us. This is a joint venture between the Boston Society of Architects. My name is Chris Moyer. I'm the co-chair of the Emerging Professionals at the Boston Society of Architects, and then the Built Environment Plus.
And Built Environment Plus, which is the new name for the U.S. Green Building Council based out of Boston. And then here on behalf of the Emerging Professionals of Massachusetts group. And my name is John Congolatus. I'm a doctoral candidate at MIT.
So a few quick housekeeping notes with Zoom. Please keep yourselves muted during the presentation. I believe you've all been muted as you entered. The chat function is available, and if you have a question throughout the meeting, please utilize that, as we will be having a Q&A at the end, and we'll be utilizing the chat feature to ask questions from the audience. This session will also be recorded, and you'll see further information on how to find the recording. And then this session is also available for 1 AIA credit. We will be posting the link to fill out a short form in the chat if you are wishing to receive AIA LU credit for this. And then if we can, our panelists for the evening, if we can please have each of you introduce yourselves and a brief statement about who you are, what you do. I guess we'll start in the top left and just work our way down. So Alexandra.
Hi everyone, I guess I'm always first. So I am working with the Cadmus Group. Right now I am a recruiter, but I also have some work that I do with HR, so like onboarding and all of that. My background, I've worked at a staffing agency as well, and I did MBA in human resources back home in Puerto Rico.
Thank you. Welcome, Alexandra. Nidhi, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Nidhi John. I am an architect by profession. I work at Prellwitz Chillinski Architects, also known as PCA in Cambridge. I've been there about 14 years now. I did my architecture in India, came to Kent State in Ohio, did my master's, then fell in love with a guy in Boston, moved to Boston. Boston's my home now, and been working here. Started as a junior architect in the firm, and now I'm a senior associate, so it's been a good long career path in the office. Happy to be here.
Good evening. My name is Debra Liverman. I am the Executive Director of Career Advising and Professional Development at MIT. I've been at MIT for over 20 years, and in my role, we help undergrad, graduate students, PhDs, and postdocs gain experience but also get started in their first professional jobs after completing MIT. I'm fortunate in that I get to work a lot with MIT data, and so I'm in tune with the data that we have for our graduates, but also some of the information from our national association, which includes other college career centers as well as employers. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Debra. It's great to have you here. And Thomas?
Yeah, that's me. Hopefully, last but not least. So I work for Meridia Recruitment as a senior consultant. My team specializes in architecture, engineering, construction within New England, obviously within the major hubs, Boston, Hartford. We partner with a lot of the local architecture firms, civil engineering firms, construction management firms, supporting a lot of their recruitment across the board, everything from on the architectural side, from intern architects, junior designers, all the way up to principal level.
All right, well, welcome Thomas, and welcome everybody to the session tonight. I think now we will move into kind of a curated list of questions that all of the participants had provided when they registered for the event. And so I think I'll start with the number one question from everybody is the pulse of the industry, and what is your take on the industry right now, and how is the industry and firms responding?
I'm happy to start out, if that's okay. I'm very optimistic. Honestly, I can say that obviously it took a big hit, especially on the architecture side over the past couple of months, but I've seen, I would say in the past maybe 5 weeks, a real optimism. We talk with a lot of owners every day. And I think people think the future is very bright for the profession. It's survived a lot of tough times in the past. It's a resilient profession, and the reality is the economy is starting to pick up and gather momentum. It's really dependent on the kind of sectors that you play in. We've noticed that firms that kind of specialize in a lot of public work, multifamily work, life sciences, healthcare, are really thriving during these times. Naturally, some firms that kind of specialize in more specific niches, such as like hospitality, it's been a bit difficult. But I think this is it's gonna help firms transition a bit, maybe become a little bit more diversified with their projects. And then I think people they're gonna really lean on emerging professionals, junior designers, giving them responsibilities maybe a little earlier than normal. But yeah, I'm very optimistic.
I'd say the same, to chime in. As an architecture firm, because we are in so many different sectors, like Tom mentioned, it's been a blessing actually, because the multifamily sector has picked up more. We had office projects that kind of had to be re-envisioned because office wasn't the biggest thing in the market now with COVID. So developers are, they have the land, they have the properties, they are looking at how to be creative. Even retail tenants, right? We used to have 3,000, 4,000 square foot areas. They're like, well, now you got to think differently. What else can we do? So it's helpful to be able to be creative and come up with solutions. So there's a need for that in the market. People were kind of frozen up the first 3 months. We saw a lot of the developers kind of pull back and say, let's write this out. And then after 3 months, when people realize, well, we're not writing this out, this is going to be a little longer. So now we got to start to figure out how to live with this a little bit. I think we've seen a more positive shift, like Tom said, in the last few months.
And I'm just going to add to what Thomas and Nehat said in terms of the general employment. I will agree that initially they did not know what to expect, but things are getting better. My national association, which is NACE, that looks at all employment, they did quick surveys to employers and to colleges just to get a sense of what the hiring was like. And in comparison to this time, I think they said about 8% of all employers revoked full-time job offers. But if you compare that to 2008 to 2009, that was actually higher at almost 10%. So we are better now than we were in 2008 and 2009. And so I'm agreeing with Thomas and Neha in terms of I am very hopeful about what the future will be.
So chiming in a little bit of what I've seen at Cadmus Group, we're a strategic and technical consultancy. So working with Homeland Security, we've obviously seen an uptake helping out with the government, FEMA, et cetera. We also have environmental, that's EPA. We've also keep seeing, you know, an uptake in those positions. Energy, maybe a little bit more affected if you have to go, you know, into doing some field work. Well, given COVID, you obviously can't sadly do that, but it's pretty much been pretty stable. Like Thomas said, you'll see that, you know, airlines, hospitality, that will be definitely affected. But I think it's a good time, you know, you can get creative. You can see, you know, that we're able to pull through this, that, you know, you can even work from home. A lot of companies didn't feel that was possible, and we're doing it. We're still here, you know, thriving. So that's definitely something positive out of all of this.
I think those are all great perspectives. You know, I think I like the optimism that Thomas began with saying that we're really looking for some resurgence and kind of resurgence of the resilience of the community. I think that kind of blends in well to, you know, what many of the folks on the call are interested in terms of getting a job. So as the COVID has changed the skill set requirements for emerging professionals and recent grads, have you seen a demand change for skill sets or in addition to skill set requirements that you're posting for?
I think from my perspective, I haven't necessarily seen it change. I think it's just important that new grads and emerging professionals need to understand they need to be well-rounded. That's what companies are looking for. They're also looking for, from a software side of things, people need to be proficient. They don't have the time to do as much training as they normally would have. And I think you're gonna see maybe the pressure put on new grads or emerging professionals to kind of step up and take on more responsibilities, especially at the big firms that before they maybe didn't touch as much because they were a little compartmentalizing their tasks. So I think that's what you're gonna see, but I don't think the skill set has changed. I think people did maybe the expectations. That's what I would say.
And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later on, but I think one of the important skill set that all new hires will have to show is how they're able to connect with people online. Usually that is something that people do in interviews, but with all interviews being kind of virtual these days, the question still becomes, how do you connect with that person in the office? What are your communication skills? What are your collaboration skills? And so you're going to have to show in the interview process that you're able to do that, whether you're in person or whether you are virtual. But I agree with Thomas. They're looking for people to be well-rounded during this time. And I think that that's going to be even more important.
We actually learned that we hired 2 new hires in the month of March, in mid-March. And to be honest, none of the other 68 have seen both of them in real, but we have only seen them through virtual calls or they're on meetings. And we use Microsoft Teams as a platform, but they only have the exposure. The downside is you only have exposure to the people you're working with. But we're hoping that's a temporary thing. But the communication part, like knowing how to communicate, when to communicate, not feeling shy about it is very helpful for people in leadership and in the office, because sometimes there's so many meetings now, people don't have time. So it's trying to be strategic and being smart about how to connect with others.
And thank you so much. And, you know, some people in the audience had also expressed interest in pivoting or transitioning their career or the industry that they're in during this time. Do any of you have any ideas of what ways they can set their experience apart, given how everything is remote nowadays?
I would say from a recruitment perspective and going through the application process, I would say it's more important now than ever to create things like cover letters, to explain maybe why you're transitioning, explain your background, and really tell a story going through that process. You want to get away from individuals looking at your resume and kind of putting you in a box, right? So I think that's important. I also think it's important to attend industry events that you're interested in. Obviously, connect with people. Look for stakeholders or individuals that kind of have decision-making power, and simply reach out and ask for a favor and have a conversation. That's how I think you do it. I also think if you're applying for a job that's a little bit outside of your scope, it's important to not just have a generic resume, but really tailor your resume for that specific position, right? You want to be able to present yourself in the best light possible, because the reality is a lot of times you only have that one opportunity. So I think that's very important.
I'm going to also add just making the most of virtual receptions. I don't know if anyone has had the opportunity to attend any receptions or conferences, but that chat feature is very useful. I attended one conference where it was like 100 or 200 people on the call. And during, as I was listening, I was chatting with people who I either knew or who I wanted to engage with. And then I followed up after the conference to make sure that I'm connected to them, because that's something that is really hard to replicate virtually online. So that you have to do more than just attend a conference. You have to be able to both connect with the person during that time, but also after that event is over. So I want to say that's very important.
I like how we're bringing up this idea of really connection. And I was curious if we could dive a little bit into this. How do you find that element of connection when you're working in a virtual space? And the shared experiences may not be there.
Well, I can talk a little bit about how we've done it at Cadmus. So definitely constantly calling each other just to try to maintain the unity, but a couple of our sectors have gone above and beyond, and they've created different groups or teams. So maybe they schedule happy hour, book club, just something to maintain that unity, whatever it is. There's even like trivia nights. They've become pretty creative, even doing a cookbook, a COVID-19 cookbook with pictures and everything. So it's definitely, I feel like even though, through tough times, we've been able to do our best, be creative, and even create new things. So definitely, try to maintain the connection as much as possible.
I think this is a very hard time for people who are trying to get in the industry. There's no kidding about how challenging it is at this time to find a job. But I think the good thing is, so I'll take the example of the BSA mentorship program, right? There's people in our office who are actively involved in these little groups at the BSA. And there's the Emerging Professionals Group. There's different venues where people can meet, even if it's virtual hour for like half an hour. People are finding value. For example, there was a recent volunteering for restaurant to help restaurant owners. And the BSA asked for architects and volunteers. So there's a lot of people who signed up. You have to find creative ways to get out and connect with people. It's very challenging. Like I met 2 restaurant owners only because I saw that volunteering opportunity. Otherwise, I'm stuck in my house working with everybody in my office and nobody outside. I don't go for any events, but you have to constantly look for those networking opportunities. Like if you're, there's the Women in Design group. You have to find what's out there, and it is not very motivating to go for these when they're online, I'll be honest. You have to kind of force yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone to say, well, I don't know what I'm gonna get out of talking with in an event that has 250 people, but you'd be surprised. Like we were put into these little Zoom chat sessions where I got to talk to 6 other women. I wouldn't have thought of it when I signed up for it. So push yourself and get a little out of your comfort zone might be helpful. I see a question. Someone's asked a question.
Yes, I see a couple of questions coming in. Just so everybody knows, feel free to add questions throughout this session. I actually just opened a Word document and I'm copying and pasting them in. We will have the open question and answer period towards the end. And I will go through this list of questions as well there. But following up, Nidhi, you mentioned that your firm has hired 2 people, I think you said, currently
Yes.
through all of this. Can you explain from your perspective and from the industry, what does hiring and onboarding look like during this whole situation?
Sure. So normally the hiring, and I like to believe we have a very good, robust process. You know, HR, COVID has been the nightmare for our HR lady in our office. She is very passionate about, like, if you're an HR person, you are connecting with people. And this time has taken that primary function out of you. And the one thing that we've normally, when, you know, we have a new employee, they walk around the office, there's a meet and greet, we have a buddy for everybody. That's your conduit to, you know, where the printer and the coffee is, to who are the people who work in the office. So there was that human connection is missing right now, but we still, everything is paperless now. There was the whole onboarding process. You know, the person meets with different groups and heads of groups. So you do meet a few people. It's been challenging, but we've tried to make the most of it. Every Wednesday as an office, we make sure we have this coffee talk. It's only a half an hour. But every Wednesday morning, 9:30, the entire office gets on a Zoom call like this. There's chat sessions. It's just finding ways to integrate people. We even had like a one-on-one. We were randomly paired with another person, and we had these conversations. So those are small moments where somebody, if you're new to the office, you basically want to meet other people. You want to meet other people in the organization. So our office has kind of been more specific about how to find ways for those 2 new people to work with other teams and meet people.
Yeah, I think connection, like you said, it is so important. I can tell you from just the recruitment side of things, a lot of it has been done virtually. Like we've done a lot of placements over this period, and it's been facilitated through whether it's Zoom like this, Teams, Skype for Business. Obviously, we have to adapt, but I feel like everyone's getting a little settled, and people are starting to get used to that. This is kind of the new norm, right? So it's I think it's going to get easier. And like I said, from my first point in the first comment, be optimistic because there is positions out there. It's just about finding them, right?
So I was curious if the questions about moving your career is because you want to move the career because of your own choice, or because you think it's not valid at this time of COVID. Like there's 2 reasons why you do it, right? So, and there are 2 different ways to look at something, but I don't think, at least in my personal opinion, I don't think the coronavirus is going to change the architecture industry or the industry at large. It's just, it'll be a little slower, there'll be a little hiccups, but the industry still will be strong because people need solutions to problems and they're not gone. They're temporary, and who knows what the world is going to be in 6 months. So there might be new things. So we're all trying to solve problems, and sometimes it's a little hard, and acknowledging that it is hard is okay. But if you're really not into something and you want to try, like someone's asked, do you see new career paths in sustainability? Specifically in the last few months, I haven't seen that specifically, but I know that the city is pushing towards more passive houses and more green buildings, and just there's a lot more awareness about sustainability in general in this world, and we're going that way. So I think that'll be definitely something that'll keep evolving over the years.
Building on that sustainability note, with many people working from home, this presents a great opportunity for sustainability, but also says, you know, for many people who will not be commuting or will be working from different cities or states and trying to integrate them in, is there a different approach that you're taking as a whole to integrate or hire prospective candidates from these different backgrounds?
I can go. So we had somebody recently from our office, 2 months ago, moved to Iowa. She's working from Iowa. It was a family crisis, but she moved and she's working from there now. And we have, if you had asked a lot of us in our office 6 months ago how it would work being remote, people would have said, I don't know if it's really working out. But this is the positive of a virus that has taught us that we can still be efficient and do what we need from a distance. We had a person in our office who worked for 3 years from Seattle until she just felt like you can't progress as much as an architect in a firm if you're not physically there meeting clients. So that's the reason she moved. So I think your career path, that's my personal opinion, that your career path is a little limited in the architecture industry. If you're not able to have your interaction with clients, if you're not able to be there, you can get to a certain point, but then if you want more out of your career, then you're going to want to be a little more local and be more accessible. It's probably not true for all industries.
No, I would agree that. I would say traditionally the architecture profession has been kind of a little bit of an old school mentality in that they want people commutable distance to the office. I do feel though that this crisis has kind of opened the doors a bit, and we're having a lot of conversations with business owners regarding working from home. Before it was kind of, I mean, it was a piece of it, but it didn't really come to the forefront. But now it's really something that people are really addressing and owners are taking very seriously. So I think you're going to see the transition. It's going to take a bit of time, but I think maybe give it a couple of years. I think it's going to become more and more the norm.
I would have to agree with what Thomas and Need had said, in that the pandemic has kind of forced all of us to work remotely, but it has also opened up opportunities for, I would say, a diverse group of people. Particularly, if we look at the US, some of our groups are in different places. And so now if I'm a company and I now have access to the talent that is outside of Boston, that means that my hiring and recruiting can become more diverse. And so I think a couple of things have to be in play. Is one, that we need companies to kind of learn from this experience and figure out like what really can be remote versus what needs to be in person. And then two, how does that expand their recruiting world? And what benefits do you get from having a more diverse set of people who can do the work? And so I'm hoping that companies will learn from that in general, and that it means that we all get access to a wider range of people, both geographically, but also from different backgrounds. So hopefully we will learn something during this time.
Yeah, I hope so. I've heard of a couple of people, even my office, who have moved to Texas or moved back home to family because they can easily work remotely and don't plan to come back. Alexandra, I think maybe you can help with this question. Is within the HR field, how would you say the field has changed now that we've worked and kind of switched to a fully remote operation compared to the amount of in-office work that used to happen?
So I would say, you're able to see that we're able to do it remotely. You're able to, let's say, have someone start pretty much immediately because we can just ship them a laptop and they can start. Versus if they live, let's say, in Texas and they want to work in Arlington, then they have to move. And we have the ability to now just say, I need you now, we can start you now. So that's something that's positive. We're able to bring quicker people on board and not have to wait, and then they can move on their own time, whenever things get better. But other than that, I would say, sadly, you have to be constantly, reaching out to people. You don't know what someone's dealing with. Maybe they live alone, so this is definitely harder on them. So just trying to maintain that human contact and trying to learn more from people about their lives so we can all, maintain ourselves happy. And if you need a little bit of a push, give it to them and try to maintain that connection, as everyone has mentioned.
I think working off of that, I think this is a direct question that was a response. You know, is it expected that organizations will provide the necessary equipment for positions? I would believe it is. But if someone else wants to chime in on that, if it's
So
different.
I would hope so too, but there are a lot of legal standpoints on this. So I can understand why a lot of companies might not, you know, do this. But I understand others like Amazon, Google are, you know, providing, let's say, desks, chairs. Clearly, they have to make sure that, you know, they're in a correct form and everything to maintain, you know, that you don't have any issues, physical issues with, you know, the correct standing or whatever. But again, there's still, you know, a legal standpoint with this. If something happens and you fall, then, you know, what happens? So everyone also has to think about that, you know, point as well.
So that I think it's a good comment. Like our office, like I'm sitting on my office chair here. I literally sit 2 weeks after sitting on my crappy dining room chair. I'm like, my back hurts. This is not working. So I emailed HR and the boss, and they were like, whoever needs to come, grab their table, grab their chairs, grab whatever you need. Like I didn't have a good screen at home. I just had my laptop. So there was like a list of people who needed to you want to make people comfortable. They're working. Still your regular Monday to Friday work. So if there's things that are stopping us from doing our job, then we need to ask for help. And I think the company quickly realized there were too many people. They ordered a bunch of laptops. They ordered some screens, dual screens, because we needed both of them. So there was this immediate rush in the first 2 weeks to kind of make things comfortable. There were like 8 people who didn't have a ability for cameras. So when we did Zoom meetings, they were blank all the time, and they said, we don't have a camera, inbuilt camera. So there was a big push up front to kind of address and make people as comfortable as they can. It's very challenging to work from home. This was not what we were meant to do, and we are adapting to it. So I thought I was going back to work on May 4th. So.
I think go ahead.
I was going to say, the only thing I would add is if you're looking for an internship or a short-term project, you definitely need to have your own computer so that you can jump on that project right away and not have to wait for something to be sent to you. So if you have a laptop, if it's an old laptop, as long as it works, I think that is important that you have.
So earlier we touched on a little bit of family life, and especially now that people's backgrounds are literally their background, and this is coming up both in the video sense, and also it's hard to hide someone's a child is calling out in the background. How are people making this work and trying to balance this new work-life home dynamic that we're new to experiment with?
I think it's just important for people to just be compassionate. The reality is we're working during a pandemic, and there's going to be challenges, and you just have to understand that, and hopefully the ownership of these firms will understand that as well. I think as much as it's important to be connected professionally, I think also just socially with your coworkers, it's really important to check in, even if you have some sort of functions. Sometimes we can kind of get isolated in our own tasks, and it's important to kind of take a step back and realize that we need to maybe take a break or kind of communicate with our colleagues and just make sure everyone feels kind of interconnected. I think that's extremely important.
I think that's the key to it, just maintaining the humanity of it all and knowing that we were not meant to work from home, but if your child walks in screaming for something with a ninja costume, it's okay. It actually, sometimes it's a break when you're in a conference call and you see someone's kid walk in or someone's pet walk in. It just makes you so real. And it kind of is very humbling. And everybody's dealing with this. I mean, this morning's coffee talk was all about it, saying everybody has their own struggles and everybody has their own challenges, but we're also good about compartmentalizing ourselves at work it's easier when you're at work in a different space, but now your space, your worlds have got mixed. And everybody, I have found that people are very compassionate and understanding. You're in a BPDA call, Chris, we were sitting, Tamara has her kitchen in her background, and you comment on her glass, beautiful kitchen backsplash, and it's okay. We would have never thought of that. But now it's okay to kind of let somebody into your personal space and feel comfortable. I think it took people a little while to get comfortable with the Zoom calls and the fake backgrounds. I don't have my fake background. This is my background with my kids' artwork all around, but it made us feel more comfortable with time to be okay.
So, and I know, Alexander, you touched on this a little bit with your firm, but some of the questions have also been focused on how has work from home affected your firm culture, what are firms doing? We had another really good question just submitted that was, since we're basically going to be social distancing for a while, you know, how do we keep up this, let's go grab a coffee and have a conversation kind of mentality that I think a lot of us were used to having?
I would say that's pretty much just grab a coffee and call someone from Zoom and you can do it. Like Nidhi said, every Wednesday. It's just, you know, trying to make that connection, trying to maybe something uncomfortable, but you are making yourself go out there. And it's something that we probably wouldn't have done if, you know, if we were in the regular office environment. So, you know, again, we have to see that there are positives coming out of this and just, you know, try to think out of the box.
So if you are trying to connect with someone, I think it's good to know who you want to go out with for coffee. If it's somebody you already know in your network or your organization, find out what their comfort level is. If it's a Zoom call, it's a Zoom call. If I actually drove to my colleague's backyard 2 weeks ago. We sat 10 feet apart. I took my lawn chair, went over there, and I had my beer at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and he had his, and we sat and talked. And that was powerful because we just needed to connect and talk. It was, some of it was project, but some of it was just how it's hard. And that person was okay with it. So I think you have to almost kind of find that sweet spot that works for everybody. I mean, most likely it's been Zoom calls, but if you build that comfort level with someone who says, you know, I don't mind talking to you 10 feet apart, go for it. I think everybody has a different threshold is what I've learned. So you just have to see what's comfortable for others.
I would add, if there's any introverts out there who don't want to initiate those coffee talks, if you're in Slack, there's an app called Donut that does it for you. And so maybe you can get your office to sign up for that. But it just schedules coffee chats with you and another person. And it's something that we've been able to do with our office, even, you know, while we're away. And then if you're trying to connect with someone who you don't work with, either for like career advancement or just to kind of explore more, introduction is the best way to do it. So if you have a friend, just say, you know, can you introduce me to this person? I'm actually more likely to give people my time now virtually because I don't have to meet you anywhere. I don't have to worry about not being able to know what you look like. I don't have to have you in my office. And so I'm more likely to actually connect with you and answer your questions, whether it is a quick meeting or just an email. So get someone to introduce you. LinkedIn is great for finding those second and third connections that you may have with people, but do it. And also, you know, compliments are the best way to get someone to talk with you. So if you're in a meeting, whether it's a meeting like this or conference, send them an email afterwards and say, I appreciate what you have to say. Do you have 15 minutes that I could just ask you some questions more about, you know, and be very specific about what your ask is about this and about that. And whether it is them, they may answer your question or they may refer you to someone else who can answer the questions that you might have.
I think it's a great introduction. I like the idea of donut, particularly because I enjoy the donuts myself. So, you know, the morning coffee or the morning donut or bagels for us here on Long Island is, you know, that's a pivotal time when, as a young professional, we have an opportunity to meet a older professional, kind of get their comments and some of their professional development tips. So are there ways that firms, or are there new ways that we can adapt to providing some of these professional development opportunities in a virtual world?
I found the BSA a good way to connect, and I agree with Debra. If you can go on LinkedIn, find other connections that can point you to somebody. I mean, if somebody emails me with something saying, you know, generally I'm interested in knowing about this, we have more time. I'm not leaving my house, going anywhere. So I'd be more inclined to respond. And we all have this level of empathy, and we know how hard it is for people. I think we generally try to do the best to connect people. I see somebody asking very specific questions about sustainability, right? I mean, I could put her in touch with the sustainable designer, sustainable director in our office. Like, there's things, even if I can't answer your question, I can put you in touch with somebody who you could talk to. The other day, somebody wanted to do something about affordable housing and wanted to know more. And you point them to certain organizations, you know, just send them some websites. And then soon they start finding somebody through the websites, find some names, they go on LinkedIn. There's a little bit of homework and research that you'll have to kind of take on and do, but everybody's online now, everybody's accessible. You can find someone very quickly.
So I think we've touched on a lot of kind of work from home and that kind of situation. And I think a lot of us are also intrigued about what you see as far as long-term changes to the industry. What long-term changes do you think will occur as a result of COVID and of the situation that we're in?
I think we touched it on the first point. I think diversification is going to be key. I think you're going to see a lot of firms kind of start to dabble in different areas that they didn't really touch before. And you're going to see that not only the big firms that are traditionally known for, but also some of the smaller firms that were before very niched are realizing that maybe to be a little steady when the economy goes up and down, it's necessary. So I think that's going to be an aspect. I also think, like we touched on, the openness to working from home and having a little bit more compassion for your lives outside of your job. Traditionally, the architectural profession is long hours, and if we can make people as comfortable as possible while still accomplishing the task, why not, right? So I feel like that is going to be basically the question that owners are going to sit down at the table and kind of discuss. So I think you're going to see that.
Yeah.
I feel,
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I feel like, you know, now moving to another state is not going to be an automatic resignation, which is something positive. It's something good. You won't have to lose talent just because you need to move, I don't know, because of your spouse, because you prefer, you know, that other state. So again, there's things that are coming out very positively. There's a good light from this COVID-19 issue. So, you know, again, be creative is what I would say is the best thing that's come out of it.
I think I just really fast want to follow up on that. You know, a lot of people are working remotely, either back where they grew up, with family, out of state, for whatever reason. Have you guys seen any change in firms with regards to, instead of opening new offices to expand, maybe having someone in a different locale, a different state, who works on the projects in the main office as kind of remote, but are also leveraged in that local environment to kind of chase down work someplace that the firm traditionally wouldn't have because they weren't in the immediate region.
That's a great point for firms to now think about. We've actually kind of expanded our network automatically with it. Traditionally, we haven't, like at least for our firm, I can say that we just stay within the New England area. But now we sometimes will get a call from Florida about something, but though it's not primary, now with people being all over, automatically firms have more exposure because of their employees being in different places. So I think it's a great advantage to just kind of open it up and be more global about what we offer to as an industry. Might be for the greater good. So someone's asking a good question about what happens for positions that are remote. If you move, then as you mentioned, you wouldn't automatically have to leave the job, but if a company switches back to in-person operation, do you think they'll allow continued remote work? So this is a very interesting question, and it is on everyone's mind these days. We just recently in the office talked about, we almost need like a work task force to talk about what life would be post-COVID, because everybody wants to know, hey, I have great flexibility right now in my life. Are you going to expect me to go back to a 9-to-5, Monday to Friday job? Because that would kind of suck. I don't want to do that. So we acknowledge it. And I mean, I'm in leadership and I acknowledge I have a family and I would love to have the flexibility. So we are currently talking about it in the office, and I'm pretty sure every firm is talking about it globally now on how to keep talent. We have very talented staff in the office. We would hate to lose somebody because they say, PC is not flexible anymore. I don't want to do a 9-to-5. We have to find that happy balance. So we talked about how to have a group of people within the office from all tiers, not principals, associates, junior staff, new staff. Everybody be part of a task force that kind of understands it and looks at everybody's perspective and see what's that happy balance. Is it, like someone asked, are you going to do 3 days a week? Are you going to do 4 days a week? I said, I have no clue. We are trying to figure this out together. And at some point we feel like, we can't solve all this right now because the world might be very different in 6 months. But the one thing everybody said is they want flexibility. They want the ability to work from home and not have the stigma attached to work from home that a lot of people had 6 months ago.
I think this flexibility is a great thing to bring up. And I want to just circle back for a moment. One of Deborah's earlier comments was on the revocation rate, or the rate of offers that were being pulled back. She had commented that it was hanging around 8% versus the 10% we saw in the 2008 financial crisis. As we look forward, is there still some apprehensions there, or are we seeing more clear sailing going forward?
I would say that I don't have a prediction other than that people and employers are coming to us to hire people for both full-time and internships. So for me, that means that there is some hope, and also goes to the very first comment about why I'm so positive. If people were like, we're not going to hire, wait and see, then I would be probably on the other side of like, oh, we're just waiting and see. But employers are coming and they're trying to hire. There's still needs that are trying to be met out there, and they're just thinking very differently about how to meet those needs. And so there are no predictions that I have other than I'm just very positive about this, and hopefully we'll be able to see if this is true in a few months from now.
Yeah, I think to reinforce that, it's difficult to predict, like Debra said, but I think staffing is a good kind of projection for the future. The reality is you're not going to staff unless you have the project coming down or a very good idea that is going to happen. and I can tell you for my team, specializing in architecture, engineering, construction within New England, there has been a dramatic shift over the past 5 weeks. Obviously, when COVID hit, there was a big downward spike, but that spike's kind of basically reversed, and our phones are kind of off the hook right now as far as calls coming in, looking for talented individuals. So there's a lot of optimism. I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen with the virus and how it's going to affect the profession long term. But I can tell you immediately right now that there's a lot of optimism in the market. So it's really good to see.
Thomas, can you kind of expand a little bit? You know, you said you represent multiple different fields.
Yep.
And a lot of calls are coming back in. Do you see anything specifically in one of the fields that you represent that's kind of getting more attention than others right now? Or are there any kind of like standards or specifics that, or specific careers that people are looking for now that maybe have changed?
Yeah, I would say like just to focus on, so if I focus on architecture, like we went back to at the beginning, we were chatting about the different sectors. So there's obviously some firms that specialize in healthcare, life sciences, are really in demand, the multifamily side of things. Interestingly enough, we've actually seen a lot of firms that are outside of the city that are still doing quite well, those small and mid-sized firms. And the reason for that is they don't rely necessarily on massive projects. They kind of have those smaller projects, those mid-sized projects, and they're spread out, right? So sometimes at the bigger firms, when one project falls through, it has a big impact because a number of people are employed on that specific project. So we've seen that trend. On the engineering side, I would say it's been more focused on less on like structural building envelope, more on kind of the heavy civil side of things. So highways, bridges, a lot of public work, I would say. Some recession-proof industries like forensic engineering, for example, always going to thrive even during a downturn. So there's very much different niches, but within all the different sectors within AEC, there's definitely good points. It's just kind of figuring out exactly why and what firms are hiring is the biggest thing for kind of new grads.
I think the one thing that to keep in mind is that when a lot of the projects went on hold for a month or two in March, we try to find out why, because we work with a variety of clients, you know, retail, office, multifamily, affordable housing. The public sector affordable housing group did not see any effects. It was all tied to their financing. Basically, some of the private sector, the banks went on hold and the financing of the banks went on hold. So a bunch of our developers who were tied to those private banks had to stop and they just didn't get the funding approved. But for the other projects where funding was either pre-approved before March, or if it's a government or state project where funding is not, the resources are different, those projects still continued. They didn't have an issue. It was so tied to what their funding strategy was. And if there were independent places, retailers who just had their own finance and they didn't have to depend on anybody, so the virus really didn't affect them as much.
You know, I think this might be a good segue into one of our closing questions, which would be, I think, for each of you to, if you could please share one piece of advice for emerging professionals and recent graduates who are going through their first recession.
I want to start as someone who works with college graduates. Your network is very, very important. So whether it's a recession or it's a boom, the relationships that you have, the connections that you make are very important. So I want to say LinkedIn, to me, is my favorite app, mainly because it is the business that I'm in, but also because it allows me to easily connect with people who I meet online, in person, at conferences, and to stay connected to them throughout my career. So use this time to make those valuable connections. because whether they're useful for you now or later on, they are very, very important. So that is my advice. Don't just sit in your house and, you know, be in a place where you can't make movements, because you can make movements in terms of connecting with people.
I would say it's a scary time, but don't give up on what you started and what you dreamed of. This is a small hiccup in life. It will make you, I believe that moments like this make you tougher and more resilient, and you come out stronger. And just hang in there and focus on where you see yourself in 5 or 10 years. You have a hope and dream for yourself. Just stick to your dream, and even if it's going to be tough, you're going to come out good on the other side. So just don't give up.
Yeah, I just want to echo that point. I think although it's kind of uncertain times right now, I think it's important to have a long-term view. Don't go into this looking for a job. Understand that your career, it's a process and it's a journey. And you need to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, not just now, but in the future. So I would say to try to look for roles and don't rule out those small firms or the mid-sized firms. They have a lot to offer, especially if you're looking for a role that you kind of have involvement throughout the entire design process. You get exposed to a lot of things. I think sometimes people take that for granted when just looking at the big brands. And I think it's important to emphasize, especially right now. But yeah, ultimately be optimistic. You've worked hard to get here, and the future is still bright.
I agree completely with what all the panelists have said. One thing I would like to add is when you go out there looking for a job, you know, all these qualifications, requirements, you know, it's not like a box in which you need to fit into. Maybe you have something extra, maybe you have something less. Always apply. You know, you at least will fall, your resume will be in a database. We will be able to reach you. We can search for you, and maybe something that comes, you know, further along, you will be the one that we think you're a good fit. So we could be reaching out to you. Other than that is always try to get yourself in those emails from whichever company. You know, that way you'll be the first one to get those job notifications. Since probably being a graduate, a recent graduate, there's going to be a whole bunch, you know, of 300 or more, let's say, applicants. So it's always really good to be able to be one of the first ones to apply. So make those email notifications something of great importance. And obviously, you know, LinkedIn is always a way to connect with, you know, a lot of people and even get to know, you know, firsthand new opportunities that come up.
And Chris, you had mentioned that you would share our emails, right, with folks if they have more questions after today to help. We're here to help. Sorry, Deborah, you were going to say something. I could cut you off.
I was going to say, if you are a new college graduate or you just graduated from a professional school, please go to your college career center. I think that some people don't know how to use them, and so they get disappointed. But you can ask them any and everything, and just be able to articulate what your needs are, and they can support you. In our office, we have trained counselors who work with our students, but then we also have a whole nother section that develops opportunities. And so go there often, you know, make sure that they know who you are and that you know, that they know that you need help. And most of them are still available virtually. So, you know, I love it when I see people multiple times, because that tells me that they really want that opportunity.
Yeah. And I would say from our perspective, if you like to have a career chat, you just want someone to review your resume, look at your portfolio, work samples, or just kind of help you guide. I know it's a difficult time right now, but this is what we do for a living. And my team is they're niche recruiters. So we understand this industry. We have a lot of good connections, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. I can't guarantee that we'll find you a position tomorrow, but we'll have you top of mind. So please reach out. I know the facilitators are going to share our email at the end, and we'll definitely set up chats, and we'll do whatever we can.
I think it's all great comments, and thank you all for your time so far. As we start to open up and look forward, one of the questions that came to mind as we were discussing this is, typically in a recession, we'll see that recession hurts the lifelong prospects of recent graduates. Should we be expecting this to be similar to that, and thereby be thinking of more schooling versus or taking a time away from the workforce, or should we be saying that this is a different opportunity?
It's a very interesting and very individual. It's an individual choice, right? I could be somebody who might just get lucky finding that job in this 4-person firm and I really like it. Or I could be somebody who says, you know what, I really like this college master's program and this looks interesting for me and it keeps me safe for the next 2 years. I'd go that. So it's a very individual choice, and it's hard. It's not a yes or no, either or. I was just talking to somebody in Toronto the other day. She had applied to a master's program because she was just worried she wasn't going to get a job. And I talked to her 2 weeks ago and she just found a job. And she's like, well, I changed my mind. Now I'm happy here. I like the experience. I want to do this. So it's just very personal. But I think you keep your options open. Don't keep your eyes open, keep your options open, keep your mind open to explore and try out different things. And if something doesn't work out, I always believe that some other door opens.
Yeah, I want to agree with you in that it is such a personal choice, whether you decide to what we call hide out in master's and PhD programs until the market recovers. This is my advice to you. Find somebody who's going to tell you the truth about your professional journey. There are people out there who will do it. You might have to find and talk to 3 or 4 or 5 people, but once you find that person who's interested in developing young professionals into their careers, they're going to be very honest with you about what skills you're missing and how to fill those gaps. Sometimes filling that gap is school, and sometimes it's not about school. It may be about you developing an area of expertise or getting more skills in a certain field. So find that person. They're going to be very instrumental for you both now and later on in life. But I call those people developers, and they're interested in developing people and professionals. And all of us should have some of those in our life.
Just make sure they're not your relative. They'll be like hidden interests, some neutral party.
You know, and that touches on a question that someone else had submitted, and it was, what would be some technical skills someone could acquire specifically to sustainability to kind of up their professional profile a little bit, rather than just being kind of an entry-level generic position?
So actually somebody else had pinged me separately and I messaged them. So we have a sustainable director in the office. So I actually offered to connect her to the sustainable director. Because if you want to know a little bit more about what a specific line is or a specific job profile is, I think you need to know more about what it is. Like, I can't just say, I need to know more about what the person does or what the job means to even know that that's what I want to do. I went to master's to be an urban designer. I worked in firm for 2 years doing urban planning, and I was depressed because I realized they were planning for projects to be built after my retirement. There were like 20-year schemes and 40-year schemes. And I said, no, this is not what I want out of life. So I changed my course, but I think you just need to know, if you think you're interested in something, you just need to learn more about it from other people. Like Debra said, find people who are doing what your dream job is and talk to them about what it is to learn more about it. Educate yourself as much as you can.
Yeah, I echo that too. I think research is so important. The reality is you're in charge of your own career. People like myself can help, obviously, and kind of guide you in the right way, but it ultimately comes down to you. think it's important to research the firms that really take sustainability serious and don't just kind of preach about it. And it's important to make sure that you're put in the best position to be successful, whether that's learning new softwares, whether that's always keeping your work samples and portfolio up to date, whether that's kind of fixing your resume so it highlights the points so they jump off the page, right? These are all things that everyone can do, and they're quite simple, but I feel like some people overlook it, right? Like you find a firm that you want to work for, there's no stopping you from finding who the key decision maker is and reaching out, right? That's what it takes. And I think you'd be surprised the amount of people that are kind of willing to lend a helping hand if you reach out and you explain the situation, especially right now. People are very open to having those conversations.
I see someone says that in the chat that there's a lot of student discounts right now. That is true for every place, right? You go to edX, you can get a discount. There are tons of discounts right now. So take advantage of both free and discounted opportunities to enhance your skills.
So one of the questions we had earlier related a bit to that skills, and I think integrates with changes more particular to the architecture firm. And what do we expect design-wise or construction-wise to be changing as a result of COVID?
We are looking at, I can at least say from a design perspective, we are looking at, for example, in all the buildings, like how do you go touchless, like less things to touch as you're moving through the space, because you want to see how to reduce the amount of interaction you have with things. That's a holistic across the board. But then there's things like now people are looking more at outdoor seating, or even if it's bathrooms, just like thinking more about how people are going to move around a space and what it means in today's world. And, you know, how do you prolong the use of an outdoor space as much as you can into this shoulder season? So those are design impacts that are happening across the board, especially restaurants, retail spaces. Those people are more focused. Multifamily, they're looking at, is it great to just have one big resident lounge space? We're actually thinking of maybe it's not good to just have one space, but maybe you think of different, nobody has an answer to it, right? Everybody's just researching with so many different firms, and they're talking about, you know, maybe you have smaller spaces, maybe you don't have built spaces for large gatherings. So there's a lot of thought in the design world, depending on what sector you're looking at. They're looking at how you could make social distancing an easy, flexible option for spaces that we design. I love all the links that people are posting from AIA. It's very informative.
I was going to say, I think there are a lot of resources people are posting in the chat that look fantastic.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned before too, when we were talking about career services, I think it was Shiloh, said to also look through alumni associations. They also have very special services to it. And also, you know, if you're involved in any kind of community or college organization, whether it be like a fraternity or sorority or kind of even more of an informal group, looking through alumni of that organization as well is a great way to kind of expand your community and expand kind of your list of references as a jump off point if you're looking for something else. And it looks like we have run through, I think, most of the questions that people have been submitting. I guess if there's any questions anyone is still hasn't submitted or still wants to submit, we can give it about another minute or two. Okay, so I think this is actually very informative and very great. You know, I want to thank all of our panelists today, and we will follow up. We will send kind of the emails from all of the panelists to everybody. I think the chat is saved automatically, and we can provide a lot of the links in a follow-up email as well as some advice from fellow people in the call. If there's any last words that any of our panelists would like to provide before signing off, you can feel free to now.
This is a great venue. It's a great experience. Thank you for making this venue possible. Chris, Gabriella, and everybody else who's been working on this.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you too. We have these career conversations every day, but it's rare to have the opportunity to kind of to discuss with so many people kind of what's going on, right? You usually normally have these individual conversations, so I really appreciate the opportunity to share hopefully a little bit of guidance.
Yeah, definitely. It was great. I haven't participated in one of these before, but it's definitely very interesting hearing different points of view and more information that I know recent graduates will definitely be happy to hear. So thank you.
And my last words is, I think during this time we've all learned community is, but that's even more true for your career. And we all have a career community that consists of people who you went to school with, but also people who you work with and people who you want to bring into your community. So think about that in terms of your career as well.
All right, thank you everyone. And please feel free to visit the BSA Emerging Professionals Network page, as well as, I'm sure John can plug the BE Plus Emerging Professionals page. We have some programming going on virtually throughout the rest of the year that we're working on from the BSA side, so look forward to hearing from that.
Yep, and there's been a few links throughout the chat that'll be shared later on about the upcoming events for public speaking. One coming up August 20th regarding how do you kind of embrace public speaking without feeling like an imposter. So I know somebody who's averse to public speaking myself. This has been a learning opportunity, and I thank all the panelists for bearing with us and being part of this experience.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Stay safe.